pen testing, or if you've been involved in pen testing for a while, or was part of a red team exercise, either from the target side or the tester side, this might look familiar to you, right? So it always starts with the scoping. That typically comes from the question, can I hack something, or can somebody hack whatever? Can somebody hack my OT environment? Can somebody hack my cardholder environment? Which is fine, right? It's an answer that we typically want. And then it moves into the testing, right? So you have the testers, they go there, they do the red teaming, they send a phishing email or break in, gain persistence, move laterally, escalate privileges, achieve the objectives, write the report, send that report over to you. Sometimes the report is completely meaningless. You don't know who should receive what in that report. Sometimes you don't even talk to the executives about the results of the report. And then you go and you fix it. If you're lucky enough, you're going to go and fix it. Now, when you talk about fixing those vulnerabilities, the question that I typically have from the vulnerability management people are, where do I start, right? I've been to red teams and to pen testings that we had 10, 15 findings, sometimes high findings that you could actually use to compromise sensitive data or compromise critical systems. But when it goes to VM, it's just too much in the hands of the vulnerability management people, right? So this is something that we need to address through this process as well. And then what's next, right? Typically what happens is you go back to the beginning next year and you go through the process of doing a red team again. You get in, go undetected, do everything again, send the report back, goes back to the end, goes back to the beginning. Now, we want to move away from that, right? If we're talking about building an internal red team or building a red team program, you want to have something that we create value into the other teams that are involved in the process, right? So you want to help vulnerability management to answer that question. You want to help risk management to answer the question, can somebody hack something, and what happens if somebody hacks something? Especially in the age that we are right now, that you hear about breaches every single week in the news. And every single week, you guys are probably receiving a call, can that happen to my environment, or can somebody do the same thing that they just did in the news? Now, before we go with that, let's talk a little bit about the difference of penetration testing, breach attack simulation, and red teaming, just so we are on the same page when you're talking about those terms, right? So pen testing, BAS tools, and red teaming, they all serve different purposes, right? They have different goals, they have different objectives, and they're useful for different things. It's not that one can substitute the other. They just do different things and have different goals, right? So when you talk about pen testing, you're typically talking about coverage and exploitability. So you want to find as many vulnerabilities as you can within that time frame, and demonstrate that you are able to exploit and what happens when we chain those vulnerabilities together. When you talk about breach attack simulation tools, it's typically for automation, right? So you want to test some of your new detections, and you want to do it quickly, you want to do it at scale. You can do that using one of the breach attack simulation tools that you can deploy the agents and test different test cases, much like a unit test or part of your QA process in software development, where you want to automate some of those tasks just to test if your detection is okay for particular scenarios or not. But when we are talking about red teaming, we want to improve detection and response and have somebody in there actually trying different things so we can test our detection and response capabilities in real time. Now, the primary goal here of the red team is to help improve resilience, right? So think of the red team as somebody that is really pushing the boundaries of your security program instead of just somebody that's going there and testing things, hacking all the things and giving you the report, right? So the whole process here is to emulate an adversary, challenge your security assumptions. We all have security assumptions when it comes to our infrastructure, to our applications, and to our security program, right? So when we put those controls in place, we have our security thesis, right? The whole idea for the red team is to looking from a threat perspective and challenge those assumptions and see if they are valid or not. And the last and possibly the most important thing that a red team can do is to demonstrate impact. Now, this is something that we typically miss when we're looking to pen testing and we are talking with other security teams, right? It's very hard for people to understand, especially when you talk to executives, the impact of what an attacker is doing in the environment. So when you have a red teamer, when you have a red team that is in there testing those vulnerabilities, chaining them together, and demonstrating the real impact of what's going on, that's the value that the red team can bring. So keep that in mind when we are going through that presentation. Now, this is a question that I've been getting a lot these days, which is, do you need a red team program? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Having a red team program is not for everybody, right? Not every corporation will have a red team program. Not every environment requires a red team program. You need a level of maturity in your cybersecurity program overall before you can start talking about having your own red team program. One good example of that is if you don't have a cyber threat intel team or somebody providing you with intelligence, there's no point of having a red team program, right? So where are you going to take the threats, the information, and the TTPs that you want to emulate if you don't have somebody providing you with that intelligence? What's typically going to happen is you're going to go array, right? Like you're going to try different things, you're going to try whatever. You're not actually demonstrating any value that comes from the red team. Also, if you don't have most of your security practices in place, it's going to be an easy game for the red team. So it's basically going to go back to the rinse and repeat, that we're going to test the same thing over and over again, finding the same vulnerabilities over and over again. And there's no fun in that, right? From a people perspective, no red teamer is happy to find the same vulnerabilities over and over again because it's boring, right? And you're not helping advance anything. Like, honestly, I lost count of how many times I found the same vulnerability in different clients or coming back and finding the same vulnerabilities over and over again. So if you have your internal red team, and the way that the industry is right now, so hard for us to hire people to do this job, you want to keep them engaged, right? You want to keep them challenged all the time. But if you come to the conclusion that you need a red team program, there are some benefits on that. So the first thing is you're going to have a structured red team operations. So before you go and perform those operations, you have the opportunity through a program to understand what operations will give you more impact and will bring you more benefit, right? So you can tailor the red team to your organizational needs. If you have a specific set of technology and you're very particular about the different software that you have, you produce your own software for certain activities, having a red team that understands that technology will help you push things forward. Now, you can improve support for teams. Like I talked a lot about vulnerability management and risk management. If you have a team that is connected with those teams, with vulnerability management and risk management, that will help you push things forward, especially when you're talking about compliance, right? If you're talking, if we go into banking and the financial industry, there are specific regulations that you need to follow, especially when it comes into red teaming. And the end is demonstrate value, right? So when you have a structured program, you can demonstrate that the red team is not only a cost, but it's actually bringing you value. You'll never be able to show that the red team is making the company save money, but at least you can demonstrate some value. There's a challenge in there, right? Building a red team is not easy. You're not going to go out of the stock now and start building a red team tomorrow. There are a few things here that you have to keep in mind, especially when you try integrating with different functions. Now, the first one is communication. Like that's the biggest challenge that I see, especially when you talk about objectives and results. Now, you have to be very careful how you communicate results, especially to the senior leadership. And you have to be careful when you pick the objectives for your red team. The next one is the alignment with objectives, especially business objectives. Now, each company has different business goals, different business drivers, different business objectives. That's what we are trying to protect when it comes to security, and that's what we need to target when it comes to red teaming. Typically, you can have a red team that will just test things randomly in the environment, which is perfectly fine. But at some point, you got to test things that matter to the business as well. In the end, The last one is the nightmare of everything that works in cybersecurity, defining metrics. Now, we're going to talk about that later today. Another challenge here that I mentioned very briefly is high